Thanks for stopping by. Today is Saturday, November 1st. This is a battle card series, an ongoing series where we essentially attempt to throw a bunch of stones, rocks, and sticks at the competition. So this is a battle card. We're talking today about our Countervite Server Advantage. The Countervite server is a piece of technology that sits on top of AWS. It's a bunch of functions and lambdas that emulate the Internet Engineering Task Force for a Calendar Invite server. And this piece of tech is available for any service provider or large email or web provider on the internet to use for millions of customers is where it's positioned. So we're going to get into the battle, which is the battle against add to calendar buttons and RSVP forms. I'm going to go through each of these features here and these 5 features in battle against the competition of using these ridiculous add to calendar buttons and these stupid RSVP forms for collecting data on the internet for events. So in the battle card, number 1, the feature was user mechanics. User mechanics fail, obviously, is the RSVP buttons themselves and the way the RSVP forms work. Let's just get up to user mechanic on add to calendar first, and then we'll get into RSVP forms. So here is a classic where I get a Zoom invitation. I click the button. It does not work, and if it did work, predominantly you have to basically get a 1 out of 4 chance here. If you misrepresent which calendar in which you want to go on, the ICS button code does not work on the calendar. So this is the first point of failure. And if in fact it did get on my calendar, there's no data collection for the organizer, since that is just a simple ISCS file, that is on the end user's calendar. Now this is another classic one where add to calendar didn't work. It was a StubHub ticket I bought. It said add to calendar. This button actually did not work at all. Google add to calendar does not work sometimes, and you'll get a fail. That fail whale here is unable to load event. That's pretty standard across the internet today. You'll pick a calendar out in the picker, and it simply does not load. And what you're seeing for MailChimp are a bunch of reminders for a particular event. They do a really nice job overall, but we propose it should be a calendar invite to begin with. This creates usually 3 extra emails per MailChimp event. Even if you've signed up for the event, they're constantly asking you to be reminded that the event's coming up in 1 hour or 1 day. And under these major brands, somebody like Chipotle continually will send out 2 or 3 different emails in a day for a particular event for that day. We're advocating these should be all real calendar invites. So when we get into mechanical failure, here the winner we believe is us, and us is an embedded calendar invitation either in the web or email or an app. Our REST API basically is a pipeline for calendar invitations that generate code. These codes can be embedded into web, email, and applications. So what happens simply is in a web like way, in this demo screenshot, Zach comes by, puts in his email address, clicks one button, gets a calendar invite, and we start to track that data. So we believe the user mechanics are much better using an embedded calendar invite code that we have developed. So let's get into RSVP tracking. I had spoke about that in the first slide, and that basically causes the end user and the organizer to not only develop the add to calendar button, but also develop the form. And so both of these things have to work together for the data to be collected. Remember, the add to calendar button, when you create it, collects no data from the end user. There's no way a collection of a calendar receipt is sent back to a calendar invite server like ours mechanically on the net. You basically have to request the calendar receipt from the calendar client itself and actually gather and monitor that data. This RSVP form does not do that. So our advantage here, winner is us. Surprisingly, we are collecting data from the end user's calendar themselves. The calendar invitations are stuck to the calendar clients themselves. We are communicating to the calendar clients of the end users from an organizer perspective, and collecting that calendar receipt data back to our calendar invite server. So we're the clear winner. We're natively tracking calendar responses of yes, no, maybe from each calendar receipt, providing an accurate real-time engagement until the event's over. So anytime your end user changes any of these buttons, the disposition to going to the event, yes, no, maybe, we update that data here in the organizer dashboard. In this case here, this was Zach. He said yes to the event. Mandy, the organizer, is tracking that in the calendar invite server console. So I think I beat the horse on that one. We're clear winner. And the battle card item number 3 is really post-calendar invitation fail. That means there's no way to update a calendar at all, calendar invitation, since the add to calendar button is not a calendar invitation like ours. And there's really 3 big points of failure. First one is if you don't pick the right button, it ends in confusion, and the ICS does not get on the calendar. Now, if it does get on the calendar here, like failure number 2, so it failed once, but, i.e. end user figures it out, and then end user interacts with the calendar client, there is a no reply scenario going on here. So Zoom does this millions of times a day. To be clear, you go through the scenario, you get it on the calendar, and then you click a button on your calendar because those calendar buttons pop up, but that data is not being collected. So that creates kind of a false hope for the end user saying, oh, I've already responded. Now what happens mechanically from someone like Zoom globally is they're sending out millions of reminder emails each day, remind you on the hour, and then usually remind you on the day. And so this creates at least failure number 3, which is you're getting 2 more email reminders for 1 day and 1 hour out. And if you are to update any of this data, if in fact the add to calendar got on your calendar, it creates the false hope. So this organizer has an email plus a form link for any data or any promotion changes. So what happens here is that in this whole summary of post-calendar invitation fail is the organizer stuck with redoing failure 1, 2, and 3 all over again and sending out a new creation of an event if in fact there's any changes to this data. There's no way to update any of the data, and there's no way to actually gather any data unless you're using an RSVP form. So hence the post-calendar invitation fail. Now we win here by simply the organizer just goes into the original calendar invitation they use and sent to the calendar invite server Dropbox, and they just update it. We update the information in the REST API for the calendar invite, and when we send out the new calendar invite to anybody that has said yes or maybe to the original calendar invite. So we're just following the Internet Engineering Task Force protocol of how calendar invites are updated on the internet. So because we follow this protocol, it's transparent to the end user and the organizer, and we have a really nice simple process by following the use of the create and update cancel, essentially using the calendar client for the organizer as the CRUD engine, if you will, for create, read, update, and delete. So mechanically, we're following the same workflow anybody in the world would understand across all languages. And so the update goes out, and then hence the end user would say yes, no, or maybe to the event based on the new updated information from the organizer themselves. So in this case here, Mandy edited her calendar, sent it to the service, Dropbox. We process it with our inbound and outbound and update processors for the calendar invite server. And then Zach receives it, says, yes, I'll stop by the booth to get the surprise NFL game jersey valued at $125. So this update goes out to him, and then he responds back. So that's the recap here showing the workflow. And then user experience is really battle card number 4. There's multiple failure points I've just walked through in the first 3 battle card feature items. I'm not going to go through this in great detail, but when you combine these two together, essentially 1, 2, and 3, and then add the calendar button and the form, there's multiple failure points. So the add to calendar button starts with the organizer filling out the data in the add event or add to calendar button vendor. Then the organizer has to download the add to calendar and integrate the add to calendar into a web page or email marketing template. In addition, the organizer has to find yet another vendor to generate the RSVP form and enter the same data they used that they used in the add to calendar vendor for the same event. So this is a duplicity of work. Then the organizer has to grab this code for the button plus the URL for the form and place into a web page or email marketing template. So the big fail number 2 is the organizer changes location or times or wants to add a promotion, and then the organizer has to start all over with this process. So the end user point of view fail is the end user has to get through downloading the correct calendar button code to get to the code, the ICS code to work on their calendar for that particular calendar. So again, if they pick Google and their calendar is Yahoo, it will not work. And fail potential number 2 from the point of view for the end user is the end user has to click the RSVP button, and then they have to get to the form, and then they have to get routed to the form to fill out the yes, no, or maybe. And then fail number 3 really for the overall exercise here for the organizer is the organizer would have to send a new email with a hyperlinks for the add to calendar button and RSVP form, and the end user ignores this whole event status because they're just fed up with event fail number 1. They didn't get on. It changed the user date, the hour, location, or they added a promo, and the end user just gave up. So we see that from this personal experiences. So this user experience in number 4 really creates about 6 failure points along the way if you add up the multiple vendors and the data replication across these forms here. So I added these two together, it's at least 6 failure points. So the experienced winner, we believe, is us, and I'm showing a embedded web form here with the NFL season. Zach goes in, picks out a couple games, clicks just one button each. He gets the calendar invitations for 2 different games for the NFL. He says yes to both of those. We collect the data automatically. It goes back to the organizer's console, and then we're constantly listening in receipt status of any changes here. And that's because our calendar invite server actually builds these calendar invitations on the fly with the correct request for the calendar receipts to be sent back to the API gateway to do this high fidelity data collection here in the organizer's calendar invite server console here, and you'll see this data here disposed as the same as the organizer event data that was sent in the calendar invitations to the individuals for either web, email, or apps. So this user experience wins every time just because it's one button in a web marketing form or an advanced game calendar like the NFL I just showed you. It works in email marketing where the button's just here. Somebody clicks the button, gets a calendar invite, or in an app where somebody has built out a selector here for multiple different events. They upload a list and they're sent out a calendar invite. All these are one-click vehicles because our API is a REST API and it's always listening for a click from the end user or the organizer, and the calendar invites are sent, and then we're tracking that data. So the battle card number 5 is data collection. I talked about this when we combine these two efforts together. Essentially, there's no data from the add to calendar button will ever be sent back. It's false hope, and unless the customer agrees to fill out the form. I talked about that in item number 3, and then no data from the customer calendar client gets to the organizer since the ICS file has no mechanical way to send back to the organizer of the event, even if they push the button in the calendar client, creating a false sense of response. This is what causes the multiple emails to be sent to remind the customer, since the customer has no idea it's on the calendar, and the organizer is wondering what's going on. So hence the circle reference is sending out email reminders. So the winner here is us. We collect that data. I showed you this in a previous slide. We're collecting the high fidelity data back from each calendar sent. Each calendar invite has a receipt collector on it. The receipt collector requests the information from the end user's calendar client, and that data is sent back to the console. So the clear winner at all times is the calendar invite server. We collect data for the organizer and the domain, tracking the data from the customer's calendar clients. Data collection is done across original calendar invites, updates to the calendar invites, and cancels. So those three things are critical. Our pipeline, again, generates original calendar invites. We update the calendar invites, and we can cancel the calendar invites. Those calendar invite API codes are for web, email, and application integration use cases. And I believe that's the end of the battle. Thanks for stopping by and listening today, November 1st, Saturday.